you so much, everyone, for coming to our Snack and Learn, the curious intersection of human and artificial intelligence. I'm Eleanor Chung, and I'm the marketing and communications coordinator at Polaron Connect. And I'll be sort of facilitating the webinar and making sure that everything is running smoothly. And I'm also here with the director of Polaron Connect, Eva Hussein, and also the senior researcher at the Scanlon Foundation Institute, Trish Prentice. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming again. And I hope that, your audio and the screen sharing is working fine for you all, but please let me know if you have any problems on your side, and I should be able to look into that as well. So let us start first with the agenda. So this will be a roughly 45-minute event, and it will be packed with content and very insightful discussions. So we'll have a quick welcome, and then we'll start the fun part, which is to introduce everyone's snacks, because we want to sort of create this very relaxing but also very educational sort of atmosphere for everyone, because I know that it's early morning. So we really want you to sort of be watching the webinar with like a relaxing atmosphere. And then we'll come to the presentation by one of our senior project coordinators at Polaron Connect, and then Trish's presentation, and then we'll move on to the panel discussion, and then wrapping up with a Q&A and any final questions or concerns that you've got. And feel free to ask any questions or concerns that you've got in a chat. So we'll gladly answer that. And just a little bit about us. I think you probably would already know about Polaron Connect if you're here, but just a quick refresh. We tackle complex issues through research, community engagement, and multilingual projects. And we are just really we place the community at the heart of everything we do. And, throughout the 25 years, ever since our existence, we've been partnering with community members, organizations, academic institutions, and we make sure that we really co-create resources that are tailored for the digital age, but also just really place the community at the heart. And so, yeah, I think I'll hand it over to Eva, who will sort of facilitate this fun discussion of just about snacks that we've brought.
So look, when we came up with this concept, we wondered how to deliver snacks to you. In that we were, you can do it face to face, where you provide catering. You can get people to bring their own snacks, but we've also looked at maybe a way of sending them to you, and we haven't found them. So if anyone's got any ideas, please share. But for now, what I was hoping to do is just to share what you might have on your table. And I will start. This is what I have to get me going in the morning. It's called Genki Forest, and it's a white peach sparkling water with no sugar. And this was introduced to me by a good friend of mine, Bail Kwan. I don't know if she's in the room, but it's fizzy, it's sweet, and after I've had my coffee, this is my go-to. How about you, Eleanor? What have you got there?
Thanks, Eva. So I've got a really interesting snack with me, and I showed it to the people in the office. And it's like a Vietnamese snack. It's like a flavored rice paper sort of thing. So, like the rice papers that you use to like wrap spring rolls and everything. So you sort of chop them into small pieces, and you just marinate them with different things. And with me is the seaweed flavor. And I can tell you this is like weirdly addicting. You just cannot stop eating them. And I'm pretty sure by the end of this meeting, I will have gone through this whole pack, which is not surprising. But yeah, that's the snack that I've got on with me.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Eleanor. Who else got something good to share? And my cat is being silly. Who else has got something exciting? Good morning, Crystal. Crystal, what have you got on your agenda as far as
nothing incredibly exciting, but I have a yogurt and a coffee.
Okay, that's cool. Anybody else? What have you got there? Anything exotic, unusual, cool that you want to share? Kimberly, what have you got?
Thanks, Eva. So I have here with me, it's a Filipino snack. It's called boy bawang. So bawang in the Philippines is garlic and it's chili and cheese flavor. So it's best to eat in the afternoon if you just want to munch on something. Yeah, but for me in the morning sometimes I eat junk food. So yeah.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Kimberly. Trish, what have you got?
Well, I'm the only really naughty person here. I've got Rose's chocolates.
Oh, wow.
These are the favorite, the bomb, which is the strawberry flavor.
Okay. We've also got Hasna from the Victorian Afghan Association. Unfortunately, she's got no snacks. Oh, we will find a way, Husna, to send you something next time. Like we think that it's a really good business idea to send snacks to people. All right, we've got probably another minute or so. Who else has got something exciting to share? What have you got on your table, on your desk next to you? Leanne, do you have a snack? Mark has got a large coffee, some grapes and a peach. That's healthy. And then we have cup of tea and toast with banana. That sounds delicious. Like a kind of breakfast mid-morning snack. Cool. Okay, one more. Who else do we have? Cup of
Eva,
tea.
I would like to share that I have
Yes.
something very Aussie, as Anzac Day is around the corner.
Yeah.
I love the Anzac cookies with a good cup of tea because I already had my Colombian coffee, which is very important every day.
Okay. Anzac biscuit. Thank you, Daniela. All right. Well, thanks everyone for sharing. And for Luisa's got yogurt as well. So quite a few people having yogurt for snack. Excellent. So thank you for sharing. That was just a bit of an icebreaker, but very interesting to see what people do. And on Zoom, you can't, and green grapes from Carla, great. You can't really see what people have on their desk, so it's really good to kind of peek behind the scenes. And chocolate cookies from Allison. All of that sounds amazing. All right. Thanks, everyone. Elena, we'll get you to move to the next slide and hand back over to you.
Great. So these are all the panelists that we'll have for today's session. So Dr. Trish Prentice is the senior researcher at the Scanlon Foundation Research Institute, and Polaron and Scanlon recently collaborated on the refugee experience in Australia study, and it was a hugely successful project. And the idea of this webinar happened because we were collaborating very closely with each other, and then we found out that Trish recently published a really, really interesting article, and you'll hear more about it shortly, but it really discusses the intersection of human and of AI in the religious context. So we were like, oh, why like we could do like a webinar about this because AI is such a buzzword, but like what exactly is it, and like how is it impacting organizations? So that's how we came up with this idea, and Trish very kindly accepted, and so we're very glad to have her here. But also with us we have Eva, and Eva is the director of relationships and growth at Polaron, and Eva's been sort of like the foundation of Poland, and just really driving the boat, and just really really inspiring. But we also have Byung-hun. Byung-hun An is our senior project coordinator at Polaron Connect, and Byung-hun has been with us for a long time as well, and he's also like a key personnel in delivering different projects, different translation, interpreting, community engagement projects at Polaron. So yeah, it's looking very exciting that we've got so many experienced people here with us to facilitate this discussion. So that's enough of me talking. I will now hand over to Byung-hun, who will be giving a short presentation on the intersection of human artificial intelligence. Over to you, Byung-hun.
Thanks, Eleanor. I'm Byung-hun, and today I'm going to talk about the evolution of AI in translation and interpreting and how translators are using AI tools today. So in the past, early machine translation such as Georgetown IBM experiment happened in 1954. It struggled with accuracy. There are a few reasons behind it. One of them is computing power limitations. It had only 6 grammar rules and 250 lexical terms in its vocabulary. So it was between Russian and English, but it didn't go well. By the 1980s and 90s, rule-based systems, which are based on dictionaries and grammars, they emerged, but were still limited in producing contextually accurate translations. In the present, now we have neural machine translation. They are computational models inspired by how human brains process information with artificial neural network. This allows translation to be more natural compared to the rule-based systems because it mimics how people construct sentences. Improved technology made this possible. AI translation tools like DeepL offer highly accurate translations by considering context and syntax. We also have computer-assisted translation tools like also called CAT tools. Some examples would be translation memory, where the tool memorizes translator's word choice or translated sentence to ensure consistency while reducing repetitive work. Human post-editing of AI translation allows translators to work faster, focusing on quality and nuances while AI handles repetitive tasks. So when a human and AI collaborate, I think it can achieve efficiency and accuracy. AI can help translator with speed and consistency, but human expertise is still required for accuracy, cultural relevance, and nuance. And looking ahead, AI will continue enhancing the translation process with more specialized tools for fields like law and medicine. It will keep improve, but human translators will remain key for quality and context. There are also some concerns over ethical issues like privacy and data security, because ChatGPT is also one of those AI where they gathered information from the web almost without consent, and they will need to be managed as AI becomes more integrated. You'll see more of this in Trish's presentation on the intersection of religion and AI, where ethics is the key consideration in the use of AI in religious context. As a conclusion, AI enhances but doesn't replace the work of translators and interpreters. Human-AI collaboration will shape the future of the profession. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Byung-hun. That was a very short but insightful presentation. Eva, did you want to say something? But you
Yeah, just wanted to thank Byung-hun. And in terms of the ethical considerations, it's a massive issue for the industry. I have read an article not that long ago about how that data that Byung-hun's mentioned was cleansed. It was done in Africa where people were being paid, $200 a month. And I think we'll be covering some of that in our presentation today. But I just wanted to say thank you and add that it's an very much evolving industry. AI firstly as an industry standalone, but also how it fits in and supports the work of translators and interpreters is, everyone's very excited, but I feel like we need to slow down a little and start looking a little bit more deeply behind the scenes as to what happens. But thank you. That was brilliant, Byung-hun. Thanks.
Thanks, Eva. And as Byung-hun has hinted, we're now moving on to Trish's presentation. And yeah, as I've mentioned, Trish recently wrote the article called Riding the Waves That Come, Exploring the Intersection of Religion and AI. And we can send this article over to you after this meeting. But Trish will be presenting a little bit about the article, but also touches on some of the insightful questions that arise from this article. So over to you, Trish.
Thanks, Eleanor. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to meet you and to see you and to hear about your snacks. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all as well today. So as Eleanor mentioned, I've just recently done a piece of research about how religious communities in Australia are starting and embarking on this journey to grapple with AI. And these are some of the insights I'd love to share with you this morning from that research. So I guess the main thing that I learned as I traveled through this journey was that there's quite a range of experiences at the moment within religious communities. There are some communities who have not even started to grapple with AI, religious leaders who don't know how to use it and have never used it at all. And on the other end of the scale, there are those who are very much at the cutting edge of where AI is at the moment. So one person I spoke to is in the process of helping develop an app where individuals can communicate with an AI interface that looks like a person, and they can ask that person questions, and that person can respond to them and answer their questions. And through that interaction, they can learn more about the religious teachings of their faith. So there are very much a diverse range of experiences at the moment. And even within communities, you'll find there's a diversity of experiences. So on the one hand, one congregation might have no experience at all with AI, and a congregation very nearby might be using AI in all of their work and all of their kind of religious teachings. So again, there's no one roadmap as to how communities are embarking on this journey. But some of the different ways people are using it, they're using ChatGPT or Copilot in their work to develop sermons or to think about activities they can do with their youth groups or with their study groups, for example. Another way that people are using it is to go through the scriptures. So often now communities have digital versions of their scriptures. AI can draw upon those and pull out verses or principles or teachings that are relevant for sermons or for speeches or for other teaching. So these are some of the different ways people are using it at the moment. Like us, communities are now starting to think about and to grapple with some of the ethical issues around using AI. And a lot of their concerns are not very different to others in the general communities. There's concern about biases. So those of you who have started to think about AI might know that a lot of the training data that was initially used to create things like ChatGPT was based on Western English-based language materials. And of course, in using those materials, there are biases and assumptions and perspectives that come from that material, as all material has, unfortunately or fortunately. So again, by drawing upon those apps, you're drawing upon training materials that introduce those biases into the work. Another area of concern, like with the general population as well, is misinformation. So early uses of the app saw, for example, ChatGPT create what are called hallucinations. So if ChatGPT didn't know what the answer was, it would make up something that sounded pretty good, sounded pretty authoritative, but there was no way of knowing whether that was in fact made up or not. So when you're thinking about a religious context, religious leaders are often responsible for the spiritual welfare and the spiritual guidance of their community. And if people, or if they themselves are using apps like ChatGPT or Copilot to get religious information or religious resources, and there are hallucinations in that, or there's information that's taken out of context, then there can be ramifications for those teachings or that guidance within the community. Oh, sorry, I'll go back one to the last one, sorry. And also within religious communities, I'm sure many of you are aware that there is quite a range of diversity of thinking. So if you take, for example, Christian thought, you've got different communities, you've got different, you've got Catholic teachings, you've got Anglican teachings, Presbyterian, evangelical, and so on. And all of these communities or these traditions might agree on the core tenets of the faith, but then there'll be a whole range of diverse thought where there's disagreement. And that disagreement comes because people have said, well, this text is actually more important in coming up with this teaching, or this scholar is more important, or we've decided that that was based on the context at the time, and therefore we're going to change and hold this, this teaching as more important. So if you think about AI, it's actually a rule-based program. It basically learns, if somebody asks me X, then I answer Y. And so when you're dealing with something like interpretation, which I know as many of you are translators, it's incredibly nuanced, and there are a lot of considerations to take into account. If we're talking about religious teachings, it's the same as well. So if the app is giving a certain answer, there may be assumptions and different things going on in the background that that person or that teaching, that religious leader may not know about. So this is where the concerns start to come in. Yep, next slide. Thanks, Eleanor. So one of the main areas of concern, and this is in religious communities, but also in the general population as well, is about the role of human judgment. Is it actually possible for a machine, for an algorithm, to replace human judgment? And this is, yeah, very much one of those cutting edge issues that people are considering. So in my article, I refer to the example of a young Jewish girl, and this is a true story. She wasn't using AI, but what she wanted to do was to find out an answer to a question. And so she went online to an online rabbi, which is actually a chatbot. So you can type in a question and the chatbot will tell you an answer. And again, it's a rule-based system. So what she wanted to know was she was pregnant outside of marriage. She wanted to know whether it was okay for her to have an abortion. And the chatbot said to her, no, you can't, which is correct according to Orthodox Jewish teachings. But what the chatbot didn't know was that in this girl's case, there were medical complications. Her pregnancy was not going as planned. And in fact, it was dangerous for her. And so it wasn't able to take that information into account. And unfortunately, in that instance, the young girl died as a result of the information that she'd received. And so what the chatbot didn't realize was, although that was the correct answer according to the very orthodox and strict interpretation of the scripture, there were other interpretations which were legally and equally as valid. So Jewish teachings uphold the sanctity of human life. And this was a question where it was the child's life versus the mother's life. And so if the chatbot had known about that greater context, then it would not have given that answer. And then it would have led to a different outcome, we would assume. So the difference, I guess, with human judgment is that often we are making decisions based on assumptions and values and principles that we're not explicitly aware of. And what would need to do for an AI to take over that role fully is to teach AI how to respond to every nuance in every context. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. If I'm speaking to you now, you can see my face and you can see my mannerisms and you can hear my tone of voice. But if I'm typing something into an interface, all of that information is lost. And so the very words that I'm speaking to you have no meaning without my tone of voice and my the emotions on my face and my mannerisms and so on. So I guess the question is really, particularly in a religious context where people's welfare and spiritual safety are at stake, can AI really replicate the role of human judgment, or is there a unique role that human beings can fulfill that means that machines can't take over that role entirely? I'll leave it for you to think about further. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Trish. That was such an insightful discussion. And yeah, I still remember reading your article and reading about that example and how, it was really highlighted how, when you take the human out of the story, it became a very different story, because without that sort of human judgments about the specific circumstances of the mother, and what kind of dangerous or like a critical situation that she was in, it could really lead to very dire consequences for our society. So thank you for that, Trish. And now we will be moving on to, oops, sorry, my computer malfunctioned. But now we'll be moving on to a panel discussion where we've prepared 3 questions for Eva and Trish. So these are all questions related to the topic. And yeah, I think these are really insightful questions, and just cannot wait to ask them away. So I guess I'm going to start with the first one. How are the intersections of human and artificial intelligence changing society? Over to you, Eva and Trish.
Thank you. And we've also got a few questions in the Q&A, so we'll get to them shortly. But my question to you, Trish, given that you have done research in this space, is how come we don't have AI that does my dishes yet, but we're focusing on this thing that humans can already do? And like I was flying recently from America, and I watched a documentary where they talked about agents, which is now like a new iteration of AI. So these are bots that can basically do your admin. But I'm afraid, I'm very, very afraid. So those intersections are very curious for me, because there are things that I would love for robots to do, but they're not doing them. Instead, we stepping on the toes of humanity, in a way. Do you want to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It's a tricky thing to answer. I think because we're at the very start of this journey, we don't know where we're going to end up. We're starting to see changes in society. We're starting to see efficiencies. We're starting to see work done differently. We haven't got to the point, as Eva suggested, where everything's being done by robots or AI, but we're starting to see some incremental changes. And I think because we're only at the beginning of this kind of journey, we can't see the end point yet. But I think it's important to say that at the moment, the intersection is basically human driven. So human beings are creating the AIs, human beings are instructing the AI to do work on its behalf. Whether we see that change in the future where AI directs itself and becomes independent, we just don't know yet.
And does your research show that we're leaving communities behind? So those people that aren't digitally connected to a level that a young professional maybe, or a digital native, because that's also my concern. Where governments in particular, they want us to go through particular websites or gateways, and people are just not coping with that. So it feels like the society is changing, but we're leaving lots of people behind.
I think, well, certainly this piece of research didn't look at that question particularly, but from other research, there's definitely gaps. And we saw that in COVID as well, around those who have access to technology and those who don't. And that is of concern, I think, definitely. There's also opportunity, I think, as well. If these things are created in a very simple and publicly accessible way, for example, as free apps that you can download onto your phone, then eventually I suspect there'll be actually positives as well. There'll be a democratization of information, in that people can easily or more easily access information in ways they couldn't before. So I think at the moment we'll see inequalities. Ultimately, hopefully we'll get to the point where access is more widely distributed.
Because you mentioned in the faith space, there's also different, there's lots of diversity of faiths, but also how communities have embraced or not embraced this. So this could really also lead to societal changes, sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll get Eleanor to move us on to the next questions, because I did want to leave a bit of space for discussion. And I think you've touched on risks as well, and I've already kind of also expressed some concerns about data privacy, how much we rely on AI. But I think generally speaking, there's a lot of excitement, and people embrace it. But what are some of the risks of doing so without really understanding what we are doing? I know that, for example, in Europe, in August 2024, they've introduced the first AI Act. And in it, it states very clearly that if your organization isn't AI literate, you're not allowed to use it. But I know that in Australia, we just started to look. In America, it's such a complicated federal versus state system that they won't have legislation. But could you talk to us a little bit about the risks and also how to maybe overcome them? Because you did mention opportunities, which is great, but like, how do we balance the two?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Well, I think the risks are related to the context in which we're using the AI as well. So as I said before, biases and misinformation, I think as AI develops, those risks will be mitigated to some extent. But I think the main area of risk is when AI is given a job to do that it doesn't have the competency to do. And that's very much in the area of human judgment. And we know about things, for example, real estate agents using AI to look through tenants' applications and so on. And in doing so, it's making judgments where it brings in biases. It's not taking the entire context into account. So I think at this point in time, I think the way that we mitigate risks is that we safeguard and emphasize the role of human beings in decision making, and that we make sure that human beings are not supplanted by machines in that decision making process. But on the other hand, that we use it for efficiencies where we can, but we make sure still there's human oversight because at this point in time, at least, the AI cannot replicate the range of human judgments that we're required to make.
So rather than replace humans, to support them. And the EU legislation is particularly interested because they've introduced concept of risk in there, and there are 4 levels, so unacceptable versus okay to do, and it just depends what you're doing
Yes.
with the information and with AI. So it'll be really interesting to see how that develops. Eleanor, we'll ask you to move on to the next question, which is how can we all contribute to the development of AI in a ethical way, and in a way that is human-centered, but still allows us to use that technology to the full extent?
I think use it firstly. Don't be afraid of it. Don't assume that it's too hard and too scary. It does feel like that. I feel like that very much. Use it and get it to do things and learn what it can do and learn what it can't do. And at that point, you'll be able to contribute to discussions about its limits and its use and the ethical issues that'll arise. You'll be able to contribute to those conversations. And I think for religious communities, they're not traditionally known as being at the forefront of technological innovation. However, they are at the forefront of grassroots community relationships, and they are at the forefront of caring for the vulnerable. And I think as we start to see society change, it is in those interactions where we'll start to see some of the negative impacts. And therefore, I'd encourage religious communities and everyone to be part of that conversation by getting involved.
And I think we also look forward to the research that hopefully you're going to continue in this space, because it is something new. And I guess, like with any revolution, such as industrial revolutions, there's fear, and sometimes we don't need to be scared, as you say. So by trying it out in an ethical way, that is really the only way you can immerse yourself and sort of dip your toes into it as well. So look, we've got quite a few questions, Trish, some of them a little bit curly for you. So I'll hand over back to Eleanor. And maybe we start with the questions that we got through chat, Eleanor, if that's okay. And then we've got about 10 minutes to have a discussion. But Trish, thank you very much. And we will send the article. It's publicly available, the article that you have published around this topic to the participants. And hopefully that generates a little bit of thinking and discussion amongst your own circles. Go ahead, Eleanor.
Thanks, Eva. So we have the question from Jeswin. So are the data sets mature enough for generative AI for use by religious leaders or communities on scriptures, etc.? Over to you, Trish.
Yeah, from what I've heard from those who are using it, yes. But there are difficulties in the AI recognizing and kind of containing areas of thought. So, for example, the Buddhist leader I spoke to, he wanted to create, to write some prayers. He was from a particular Buddhist way of thinking, and it was drawing from a wide range of Buddhist texts. Not all of which were recognised or given primacy by his particular stream of Buddhism. So yeah, I think increasingly those data sets are available, but again, it's how AI is using them. It's still learning basically, and how to use them correctly.
Thanks, Trish. And we've got another question from Husnia. What future AI holds with faith?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think we don't know the answer. I think religious communities need to think about it. I think I mean, I've read interesting things on this question. So what is a human being? So if we create something that's an artificial intelligence and it can think and it has consciousness and it can act on its own, should therefore it have the same rights as a human being? And therefore, by extension, can it have a relationship with God? Is it open to salvation in the same way that a human being can? These are questions that I don't think anyone has worked out answers to, but I think they're the questions that people are starting to grapple with. So I think watch this space.
Yeah, and have you noticed, or I don't think that's been part of your research, Trish, but like, do we get angrier with bots and robots? I know I do. I just want to, like when they're not giving me the answer, I treat them definitely differently than humans. I would never, feel like that towards a human being. But is kind of neutralizing human emotions, given that AI is not human, does it play a part in faith circles? Like, have you seen any of that around?
I don't think, again, I mean, these are very big questions that are not really being grappled with yet. It's early on, but I know from other kind of research on social media, certainly when people are on a screen, they are less restrained in the way that they interact with other human beings than they are in real life as well. There's a kind of safety sitting behind a computer. And so that research would indicate that, yeah, people conduct themselves differently online than in real life, which is concerning, of course.
Yeah,
by interacting with machines, we're not learning to problem solve. We're not learning to have empathy. We're not, a whole lot of human learning is lost, I think, if we just interact with machines.
Thanks, Trish. Yes, Eleanor, next.
So we've got another question from Roger. Thanks, Trish. Are you aware of how religious communities are setting up safeguards when promoting the use of AI tool, particularly with private conversations with the bots that have the potential to lead self-harm or extreme thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. The safeguards that people are kind of providing at the moment are just very basic. So be careful. There's a lot of redirection back to the religious leader. So in the kind of one Muslim community, one of the girls I spoke to, she was saying, well, the Imam is basically saying, look, don't get your information there, come back to me. I have the teaching and the experience to answer that question better than the information you can get from the internet or from ChatGPT, for example. So they're very rudimentary safeguards at the moment. A lot of the kind of deeper discussion is coming in from overseas, which again, I would be wary a little bit of that because overseas religious communities have different contexts to us. I think we need to probably do better at starting to engage with some of the issues, the ethical and kind of welfare or safety issues around these things in Australia. And there's certainly a role for religious leaders to be out there saying, look, yeah, I would advise this, or these are safeguards that we should be using, and so on. I think we're just at the very beginning of those kind of things.
No, that's great. We've only got a few minutes left, but so we might just ask if anyone wants to ask a question directly of Trish. Feel free to go ahead and do that. You can raise your hand, or you can just turn your microphone on as well. Right. So I have a question for you, if that's the case, Trish. I know you don't have a crystal ball and your job isn't to predict the future, but given the research you've done, where do you think we're heading? This is in the context of religious communities, and we've already discussed some of the risks, some of the ways that these communities work. What can we all do to be more aware, or I guess more across the issues you've discussed?
Yeah. I think I'd probably say what I said before, don't avoid it. I find it overwhelming just as a researcher. The research space is changing very quickly as well. I don't consider myself extremely technologically literate. I have teenagers and they are always instructing me or correcting me. I would say, I have basic literacy, not advanced literacy. So it does feel scary. But I think, yeah, everyone can start with the free apps. Everyone can start with ChatGPT and Copilot and so on. And then you're getting into more specific tools in the translation space. We talked a little bit about already apps and opportunities there as well. So I think that's really important. Where we'll end up, I don't know. I know that on the 18th of March, they created the first AI brain. It's not a model of a brain, it actually works like the human brain. That's extraordinary. I've read things from a Google, one of the employers of Google, who said basically in the next 10 years, we'll be having robots inserted into our body, which can take over the functions of organs and make sure that we don't have organ failure anymore. Those things are incredibly scary. So, yeah, I don't know about the crystal ball. I'm certain there are other people who have a better lens on it than me, but I would encourage everyone to take small steps. I think that's where we all start.
Yeah, that's really very wise and useful advice, Trish. I think we're out of time, and I did see a question, Hasna, with employment, because one of the things that people are worried about, of course, is that we're going to be shedding jobs, and it is just like an academic, a translator, other professions do need to be across these issues, because we don't want to become a Nokia or a Kodak or a Blockbuster Video. So you kind of have to keep up with developments. On the other hand, there are lots of risks that we discuss. So on that note, back to you, Eleanor, with a big thank you to Byung-hun and Trish and for everybody that's attended. Hopefully it's given you some food for thought. We will not be able to save the world right now or come up with all the answers, but at least we started the conversation. So thank you, and over to you, Eleanor.
Thanks, Eva. And yeah, unfortunately, we're out of time. But it was such an insightful discussion, and I also want to add a little bit on Trish's comment on the that we shouldn't be fearful of the technology, and in fact we should embrace it. I think yesterday I watched a TED Talk session, and the key takeaway was by embracing the technology, we're contributing to building more safe guards or like regulations, because we know that we are in this because we want to help people and we want to help build better regulations. So we're like contributing to that space, and we don't want to just leave it to the bad faith actors who can take over the AI space, and they will just exploit it and use it for words purposes. So I just wanted to leave it at that. But unfortunately, because we're out of time, and I know that we're a tad bit over time, but thank you so much everyone for coming. Thank you, Eva, Trish, and Myung-hun, Polaron team, and also to all people who came. Please follow us on LinkedIn if you haven't. And here I've just left a couple contacts for you if you want to get in touch with any more questions or discussion points that you would like to make.